last years of the 19th century, that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space. No one could have dreamed we were being scrutinized as someone with a microscope studies creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Few men even considered the possibility of life on other planets. And yet, across the gulf of space, minds immeasurably superior to ours regarded this Earth with envious eyes. And slowly and surely, they drew their plans against us.
Broadcasting live
from a tiny studio somewhere in North America.
This is Dark Matters Radio Live. And now I give you your host,
the silverback of ufology.
Here's Don Ecker.
Well, welcome, ladies, gentlemen, back to another edition of Dark Matters Radio. Today, April the 8th, 2024, we somehow survived the solar eclipse. I went outside to see if we could see anything. Now, I'm in sunny Southern California. We were supposed to have roughly a 50% blockage of the sun. Honest to Pete, I couldn't tell the difference. It seemed to get maybe just a tiny little bit darker, maybe, but we weren't in the solar path where this thing did 100% blackout. But it was there, it was gone, and I waited. Well, ladies and gentlemen, at least from sunny Southern California, I can tell you this: there was no rapture, there was no alien invasion, no volcanic eruptions, no magnitude 12 earthquakes. It was kind of a bust, because if you've been around the net, you saw all these tinfoil hat wearing folk talking about all kinds of crazy things. And I got to tell you, made me wonder where their minds were and what in the hell were they thinking. But hey, we're here. We survived it. The power is on, well, at least temporarily anyway, here in California. So we're doing good up to this point. Now, a couple of notifications. Number one, Mark Center will not be joining us this evening. He's got some personal things he's got to take care of. So he's not going to be here. I spoke with him earlier today. He sends his regrets, but hey, he's got to do what he's got to do. Gary, on the other hand, Gary Cassell is here. Gary, come on screen, buddy, and we'll see what the heck is going on. How are you doing? You survived the eclipse, right?
I'm in the bunker right now. I could barely hear you, Don.
Oh, okay.
It was a huge epoch event here in Missouri.
Well, hey, you're still with us. That's the important
I'm not
thing.
sure. I may be dead.
Well, okay. We'll just play it as it comes, Gary. I'm not going to make any
Monday.
Assumptions. Yeah, I'm not going to make any assumptions. Okay. But tonight's show is actually, it's going to be a very special broadcast. We originally were supposed to have two guests, all right? Both Navajo, now retired Rangers from the Navajo Rangers. Now, I got to be honest. I was not familiar with that. I was, as you know, a police officer and a detective, but I had never, that I can recall, heard of the Navajo Rangers. But I was contacted, a few weeks back by our executive producer, Bill Skywatcher. Bill told me about these two gentlemen, Stan Milford and John Dover. And John, who is joining us tonight, is a retired lieutenant from the Rangers. But one of the things that we wanted to discuss is a up and coming book written by Stanley Milford Jr., the gentleman that I don't believe he's made it here yet, called The Paranormal Ranger. And John, I'd like to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. And I got to tell you, I'm rather excited to talk about this because in all the years that I have been involved in this wacky, crazy field, I've come across, well, I couldn't begin to tell you how many crazy, weird, off the wall stories, many of them turning out to be very true. And when I saw what Stanley was writing about, I said, "Oh man, this is going to fit in our format just perfectly." And hey, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing a message that Stan is here, so we might want to bring him on if we can.
Oh, he is here. He made it. Outstanding.
Hello.
There he is.
We didn't
Stan,
want to
welcome.
start the party without you.
Yeah, welcome. I was all set to just do it with Jonathan, but did you hear my introduction?
I did. I could hear it, but I couldn't get through. I don't know.
Well, you're here now, my
the
friend.
Eclipse causing technical problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might have been it. Well, gentlemen, first, and either of you, please tell me exactly what, because like I said, I was not aware of it, what the Navajo Rangers actually are, if you would please. Either one of you gentlemen.
Okay, Stan, I'm going to start out here.
Sure.
The Navajo Rangers were formed in 1957 to emulate what the National Park Service was doing with their ranger force. Their primary emphasis at the time was archaeological law enforcement protection and natural resources protection with a mandate to do search and rescue. So since then, it's evolved even further in the years since and has become a resource law enforcement department. So we handle all the stuff, forestry, game and fish, mines, minerals, water resources in the park areas. We are the park police. And write citations and act just like any other police force. We enforce boating operations, check fishing licenses, check hunters, all that kind of stuff. We also had, at the time, I was the specialist doing archaeological resource law enforcement. There were only 2 of us in the Western United States doing that on a full-time basis. And so there's a lot to do. Our officers were very highly trained. Police officers that transferred over were unable to keep up with the work that we did and left.
From where? From where, Jonathan? From the federal agencies or local law enforcement?
This would be tribal law enforcement. There is the Navajo Rangers at the time I was there were only 15 officers, covering 27,000 square miles of land.
Whoa.
And then when Stan left, I think there were only 8 that were in the field. When I first started back in 1980, there were actually 40 Rangers. So you can see that just attrition.
What happened to the retention?
The Rangers Department is entirely tribally funded. Every year they have cuts in the budget. And so by the time I was there toward the end. It was 15, and I was asked to retire, gently being pushed out the door because by my retiring, it would save 2 ranger positions. And then, so I didn't have a problem with that. Stan took over after that, and he was a sergeant. He didn't get promoted any further because of funding, and he was actually the department director for pretty close to 2 years, and didn't even get paid for doing that.
Wow. Was there no way that the federal government could have helped out with that through?
Well, the rules with the federal government, they have what they call Public Law 638 contract, and in order to get that kind of a grant, hospitals get it and schools get it. You have to have an existing program that was in place, that the government can take over from way back. And because our outfit didn't start till 1957, we weren't included in that group. So we were ineligible. We did receive a COPS grant at one time. I believe it was $6.8 million back when community-oriented policing was pretty big. But due to circumstances beyond our control, there were problems with the grant, the tribe's handling of different grants that caused it to sunset.
Okay. Now, I would presume, Jonathan and Stan, that just like any other area with citizenry, you probably dealt with all types of criminal cases upon occasion. Would that be a fair assessment?
Oh, that definitely would be fair. We've had our share of criminal cases all over.
Now, would your agency have been similar to, for example, the state police as opposed to municipal departments? Would you have had overall jurisdiction in the event of something happening? And now, not necessarily within certain municipal areas, but were your fellow brother officers, would they have been considered basically more elite? I hate to use that word, but elite than the regular tribal police?
Actually, we have said this many times, and I know it'll cause some bad feelings, but I did consider us much more elite. Our training was at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. We were recognized by the government as federal law enforcement officers. Not only that, but we had to be tribally certified, and we had to be certified in Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah as peace officers. So,
you could cross state lines if necessary.
we could, within the boundaries of the reservation. And then on top of that, the training was there was a lot of training. We had to maintain 2 qualifications of 80% or more per year. We had to have 40 hours of training per year to maintain our certifications. Other agencies in the area are only required 24 hours of training and 1 qualification per year.
What kind of crimes were you gentlemen usually involved in investigating or working on?
Oh, we had a whole range of stuff. A lot of times, if there were no officers in the area, we would be called out to pretty hairy cases involving barricaded suspects with weapons and shootings and homicides and everything else. And as soon as the police showed up or the criminal investigator showed up, we would relinquish that to them as a matter of courtesy. Um,
Right.
I was also trained as a criminal investigator at the Glencoe Investigation School, so I was fully qualified. Um, we would also, oh boy, just I mean, you get into game and fish stuff. You get people that are spotting animals from the air and high grading what they're doing, and bringing hunters into that area to shoot these animals. Um, we have people out. One of my specialties was going after people that were killing eagles and hawks for their feathers.
Poachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had search and rescue operations. For myself, I was trained as an EMT basic and maintained that certification for 25 years, helping people in accident situations. My training spans about 4,000 hours, whereas Stan was very similar. We just
Now, you
had
two
training
work
on.
together?
Yeah, we did. We about what 97, Stan?
It was a little bit after that, maybe 98.
Yeah,
After,
about 1998, we started
yeah.
working together. Stan was a park police officer in Monument Valley for a
Now,
lot
what
of
is the
years.
preferred? Because I've heard a lot of it them referred to as res police. Is that an accepted term or not?
It's not really accepted. Navajo Police is a separate agency, and we're under a whole different division. We're under the Division of Natural Resources, whereas they're under the Division of Public Safety.
Right.
So, we were the Navajo Rangers. The Rangers have always been held by the Navajo people in very high esteem because we were able to do a lot of things that other agencies were unable to do.
Right.
Now today there are, was I correct in you saying there were only about 8 officers today that are a part of the Rangers?
Stan, you have the last numbers?
I think at the time that I left, I think in 2022 or around there, yeah, there was 8 remaining Rangers at that time. Today, I don't know what the numbers are at.
Boy, that
Hey, Stan,
that's
Chanel
very
was wanting to know if
interesting.
you could turn your camera, your phone,
Turn my
so it's
camera.
landscape instead of vertical. Yeah,
And it looked like you're in a Batman movie.
it's not rotating. Chanel, I don't know what to do for him. It looks like his phone's, yeah, the auto rotate's turned off.
Yeah,
So it's not
that's
going to work.
fine.
Never mind.
Stan, just put it back the way it was, please.
You just wanted to see more of your beautiful face.
There you go. Okay. Well, gentlemen, originally I am from the East Coast, and most of the native peoples there have moved on, emigrated, whatever. We had no Native American enclaves that I'm aware of from central western Pennsylvania, where I was born. But after coming out here, I was involved in a case that, now not as a police officer, okay, but as a investigator researcher with a fellow who was a journalist who ended up dying under very mysterious circumstances. And this, as a matter of fact, right now on Netflix, the streaming service, there is a documentary series about the so-called octopus. Okay, the Cabazano Indian Reservation figured very heavily into this. It dealt with the Wackenhut security people, which were at that time the private security firms securing the so-called Area 51 in Nevada. I'm sure you gentlemen have had to have heard about that. And the guy that died was a journalist by the name of Danny Casolaro. And there were a lot of irons in this fire. But I had interfaced with a number of residents of the reservation out there. And as a matter of fact, some of them even ended up over at my home. And we were talking about this extensively. Did you guys hear anything about that at all?
I didn't. I might have been just a little bit aware of it, but not really.
Well,
Same for me.
it involved something called the Promise software, a software program that had been developed, and later it came out that American intelligence agencies had put a back door in this software. It was one hell of a story, and I I would suggest anybody that had an interest in that might want to check this out. One of the primary players in this operation was there's no other way to say it, was a criminal by the name of Michael Riconosciuto. Now, when all of this was going on, Riconosciuto was up in the Seattle area in Washington state and ended up getting arrested. He was in jail. Somebody had given him my name and telephone number at UFO Magazine. For over 20 years, I had been the director of research for UFO Magazine after I medically retired from the law enforcement. And I would guess for about 3 or 4 months, this guy lived in my back pocket. I would get a call, would be from the prison service, wanting to know if I would accept charges for this guy to talk to me. And invariably I did, until finally I figured this guy was just stringing me along. So I kind of cut the cord there with him. But yeah, this was crazy. But the reason I mention all of this, and you were talking about the problems getting financing for the Rangers, had anybody, and maybe they did, but had anybody ever suggested placing something along the lines of a casino or cigarette selling services, something out there? I know that a lot of those things on the reservation were tax-free. The feds couldn't stick their hand into it. Am I on base or not?
Well, in my capacity as an administrative ranger, as a lieutenant, one of the things that I argued for is that the Rangers were by law mandated to handle park and recreation areas. I consider a casino a recreation area. However, when this, we have 3 casinos on the Navajo reservation.
For
And when those casinos were put in, the Navajo police jumped in there and said, we're going to provide the security services for the casino, not anyone else. And nobody questioned it. They just allowed it to go through that way. I really thought that, Navajo Rangers should have been there, because we're trained to deal with the public, to provide information, to be helpful, that kind of stuff.
Well, I was thinking along the lines of a viable income resource where some of those proceeds could have been delegated to helping finance and basically alleviate the heartburn you guys were having for not having viable funding. That's what I was thinking about.
Well,
Well,
logically,
Yeah, go ahead.
that should have happened, because just like John said, our entire department was founded as a law enforcement agency to provide service over all of those park areas. When John Ford and John Wayne started making movies out on the reservation, the popularity of the Navajo reservation grew quite steadily. And at that time, the reservation started paving the major highways throughout the Navajo reservation, which resulted in increased tourism and increased traffic on the reservation. So that should have happened, but you have to realize that most tribal governments are very, very political. And so many times from a law enforcement standpoint, it was public safety that the light was shined on, and we were just kind of pushed out of the way or pushed to the side. And
Well, I had
tribal
heard
government
politics.
suffers from the same bureaucracy.
I had
What's
heard
that?
politics can be very dicey on the reservation. That apparently is true?
Well,
it is true.
imagine a situation where you have rules by the federal government, and then you don't want to break any of those rules. You add a ton of your own rules on top of those to make it even more bureaucratic. And that way you couldn't possibly break the first rules. And that's the situation that a lot of tribes are in, that where they just add so many of their own rules, and it becomes this quagmire of bureaucracy.
Well, you had mentioned earlier that part of your mandate involved wildlife, fishing, making sure people were licensed and what have you. Now, let us say, just for the sake of this discussion, that I, who am not a resident of the reservation, wanted to go out there fishing. What would be involved with me as a non-resident, not Navajo, not American Indian? What would I have to go through in order to receive permission to do that?
You would go to the game and fish department or the various vendors, and you would get a license, basically a non-resident license to fish or to hunt. And for big game, they do offer those. We have a lot of people that come on because we have mule deer that'll some of them will dress out 200 pounds once they're dressed. So we've got some big deer. We've got elk. So there's a lot of different stuff going on. And for fishing, there's 23 different lakes up there, along with the San Juan River and parts of Lake Powell.
Well, when I got back from Vietnam in 1972, a very good friend of mine, a guy I had been friends with since high school, and I drove up to Canada to a place called Peterborough Lake to go fishing up there. And would it be similar to crossing a border? I guess it would be, like what we had to do in order to go to Canada. For me, let's say, to go out to the reservation. Is it that same type of thing?
Our reservation is all the highways are open. There's no border entry point or anything like that. So any tourist or visitor that wants to come onto the reservation can do so at their own time and convenience. So you don't have that, but you are bound by federal and state law to abide by those laws that are applicable onto the reservation. So today, I think the rangers hold what they call a special law enforcement commission, or SLAC, that is issued through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, where they will have authority even over non-Indians that come onto the reservation. Let's say if they're poaching, or let's say they're fishing without a license or something, they can be cited into the federal magistrate courts.
Ah, okay. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, one of the big reasons I wanted to have you gentlemen come on was Stan has a book that he has written that will be published in October, according to what you told me, Stan. Is that correct?
On the HarperCollins website, it shows that it'll be released on October 22nd of 2024. So this year, yeah,
it is called The Paranormal Ranger. Let's see if I can get that in there. I've got this on my cell phone, Stan. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. The Paranormal Ranger. Now, I was quite honestly, I was pretty excited about that. About 20, I'm going to guess 22, 24 years ago, my wife, who was the founder and publisher of UFO Magazine, which was published here in Los Angeles for well over 20 years, we often had to go over to Las Vegas. Well, for a number of reasons. Number one, I knew a lot of people over there involved with what we were doing. I knew people like George Knapp, who was a television journalist and reporter. And as a matter of fact, Knapp recently has once more achieved national prominence with things that have been happening in the unidentified flying object field, UAPs, today. Knapp and he had written a book along with a scientist by the name of Colin Kellner, dealing with the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. Now, originally, this place had achieved quite a bit of notoriety with a family that purportedly had lived there, wanted to raise cattle, and because of a number of inexplicable and honestly, if it's true, quite frightening things happened, they were happy to sell what had originally been their dream, okay, to financier and aerospace magnate Robert Bigelow. Bigelow put together an organization called NIDS, all right, that had a lot of scientific talent, purportedly to go out there and examine some of this phenomena that was said to have been happening. Now, while I was over there, and gentlemen, the reason I mention all this, I'll get to it in a second, but the reason I was over there, we were going to interview Knapp, and we were reviewing his book and some other things. And while at our hotel, they had one of those in-room magazines, vacation magazines, this type of thing. And I was reading an article in it. And this article has stuck with me from that day to today. A guy had been over there in Vegas on business and was driving back, I think, to his home. It might have been Arizona. And as he's tooling down the highway, okay, doing about 65, 70 miles an hour. All right. Suddenly he got a weird feeling. And he started looking around. He was by himself. And according to his testimony, he looked out. He was driving, of course, left side of the front seat. He looked out his side window, and a man was running beside the car going down the highway, keeping up with him, going 65, 70 miles an hour. Now, I mean, at first blush, I'm going, oh, yeah, right. But he swore this was true. And somewhere in this equation, okay, this running man was identified as a Native American witch doctor that supposedly had the ability to change into a skinwalker. Now, hey, I don't know nothing from nothing, guys. All right. I only know what I've heard, but a long time ago when I was a cop, I discovered that you never scoff at anything, okay, until you know all the facts. Now, Stan, you and Jonathan, okay, dealt with that type of thing from time to time. And I'm going to ask you, please clue me and Gary in. Is there any credence to that? And what in the hell does it mean?
When I first came out to the Navajo reservation after college or after high school, actually, I had that same firsthand experience of having one of these things that people refer to as a skinwalker running by my vehicle at night. And what I experienced was something where, your brain is trying to wrap around what it is you're experiencing, just like what you said, at highway speeds, and I know the average person cannot run at that rate of speed. And to see something, to be able to do that is, one, it puts you in a kind of a state of shock. And what I witnessed appeared much like what we see with a greyhound. And the back of this thing rose up about 4 feet high. And this thing that I seen was running on all fours. It was all white from head to toe. And but it does exist. And it is intertwined into Navajo witchcraft. And I'll let John talk a little bit about the overview of that phenomenon, but it does happen.
Please, I'm begging you, tell me what you know,
Sure.
because hey, I investigated some pretty weird things in my time, okay, and stuff that at first blush 50 years ago I would have said you're full of it, okay, but in all that time I've learned, don't laugh at something that you don't know anything about. And what I started hearing, and I also heard some stuff with those people I knew at the Capizano Reservation. And I just kind of kept it inside. I put it in what I call my gray basket, but I don't laugh at that stuff. And quite honestly, some of that stuff has raised the hair on the back of my neck. So yeah, I would, anything that you're comfortable with telling me, I'm all ears.
Okay. First off, I'll put a disclaimer here. I am not the expert on this subject. There are many people that know tons more than I do. I'm only one of the people that will freely talk about it. because if you, and I should warn everybody, if you know of a Navajo person, never bring up that subject, because it's bad. It's really bad. You don't
It's a
talk about it.
cultural thing, right?
It's a cultural
It is.
thing. It's very taboo. So, if you know, now the other thing is that other Native American tribes have different versions, and we just generally refer to them as shapeshifters. But you have like the rake back east. You have what's the one up in
Wendigo.
the Wendigo that's
Yeah.
known to change shape. We've heard about them in the Pacific Northwest, and even overseas in Africa and Australia. So there are other versions of things that can change shape. Now, we confine our talks mainly to the Navajo version, although other tribes around here, the Yavapais, the White Mountain Apaches, they have their own versions. And so it seems like it's something that's universal pretty much all around the world.
So
Uh,
let me stop right there for a moment, just a moment, and ask you: is it your belief that this, and I'm going to call it a phenomenon, emanates from a certain single wellspring? Do you know what I mean? There's
um,
a single source,
it's
whatever that source may be, that
it's
makes this possible.
it's really hard to say. Um, we don't like using the term belief, and up front, I'll say that uh, to believe something is to accept it with no evidence. It's just to have faith that that thing is there. Um, in my experience, what we've seen with our own eyes, what we've experienced with other officers that have spoke to us about it, and speaking to people who had been skinwalkers, that explained to us how some of these things were done. Um, the evidence uh, that you could actually wrap up and take to a court of law and introduce it, um, and there would be no questions as to its authenticity. Uh, that evidence exists, and so we've seen it. We've seen these things. We've talked to officers, and we know of people that have been poisoned by them, and it's something that, boy, I don't want to go through. Now, these things out here, they can kill you, and
Well, I that was my next question, Jonathan. Uh, I was told, and it had to be from one of the men from the Cabazano Range, because somewhere along the line, I think, if I can recall, and it's been quarter of a century ago at least, I had brought up the idea of a skinwalker, whatever, and what I remember is this individual telling me that they are evil with a capital E, and you do not want to get on the wrong side of it, because then they can target you. And if they do, you're in deep kimchi, if you know what I mean.
that would be a correct statement. They can go after you. They can go after family members. Um, there's no accounting for it. But getting back to the description, in Navajo culture, it is said that in one of the other worlds that we came from, that the man and the woman were taught um, what they call anti, which is a technique or medicine that would allow them to change shape. Now, since then, since they've come through several worlds into what is now called the Shining World, um, this thing has been with the Navajo ever since. Somewhere along the line, it became really evil, really bad. And it goes everything, it's everything against what the Navajo is taught. He is taught to be respectful, to get along with other people, to live in harmony. That's the whole thing. Is you have to have that harmony in your being. The eclipse today, we joke about it, but actually, what I did is I drew all the shades in the house, and I sat quietly. You don't eat, you don't drink during the eclipse, and you contemplate, because the eclipse is essentially uh, father son who is in the process of dying and being reborn. And so, with that being reborn, uh, it's a new life. And you contemplate that, and you look at your own life, and you say, okay, you don't look at the sun, you don't view any of this. You become very contemplative, and you say, okay, how can I make my life better? And it's just like a New Year's resolution. You determine how you're going to operate after that, how things are going to be better in your life, and how things are going to be more balanced. So, this is a Navajo traditional way. And if you think about it, it was actually very practical, because it told people, go inside in your hogans, and don't look at the sun, don't burn out your eyes like people do today.
Mhm.
Um, be safe, and use it in self-reflection. And after father son is reborn again, it's a new life.
Well, I have no doubt about that. But now my mind, okay, is desperately attempting to understand what this physical transition would be that would allow, by all intents and purposes, a human being, a Homo sapiens sapien, to physically transform their body into basically another creature that would allow such power to be demonstrated. And as an aside, aren't you gentlemen fearful that this book that's coming out in October might place targets on you?
We've already got targets on us. Um,
We have
Stan's been
since the beginning.
Stan's been attacked many times,
Physically?
physically. I guess long range spiritual attacks, where if you can imagine, somebody sticks a knife in the back of your head and just starts twisting it continuously, or into your back. And he actually had to have a remote healer help him. Uh, yeah, at
Did it
one
work?
time, the very first time we spoke about this was at McMinimus, um, up at McMinnville UFO
Did the
conference.
spiritual healer help?
Oh, it
Yes,
did.
it did.
It did, definitely.
And
What did they do?
Well, the thing you have to realize is that these kind of phenomena that tap into or deal with the negativity, or what people refer to as evil. We have people that practice Satanism and a lot of different ritualistic based uh, activity that has been going on for thousands of years. But this is tied into that, where there is people that are practicing certain rituals in order to gain certain abilities and certain uh, attributes. Um, to harm, but ultimately to harm others. And that's the bottom line. There's no, it was said back in the day that the Navajo, having this ability and gift, used it as a tool of war against, for the Navajos, against the Utes, against the Mexican people, against probably the cavalry and other enemies to the tribe. So it was used specifically as a tool of war. But later on, there was those individuals that used this ability to for their own individual ego-based purposes, to harm people that they didn't agree with, or things of that nature. And a lot of times it's used for gain, for own personal gain. So but that's
Now,
what it's
there's got to be a price for this.
Oh, there is.
Ultimately.
Yeah, there is. In order to attain this type of power, you have to sacrifice somebody that in your family that you love dearly, and they are to be killed.
Well, gentlemen, hold that thought right there. We've got to take our top of the hour break. I hate to do this, but let us pick up there immediately upon coming back. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dark Matters Radio. Tonight, my very special guest, from the Navajo Nation, Mr. Jonathan Dover, Mr. Stanley Milford. Is that correct, Stan Milford, right?
It is Stanley Milford
Okay.
Jr.
Sometimes I trip over my own name, so don't. And we'll be back after this with a heck of a lot more. Stick around. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, from our break. What happened to Stan? Oh, there he is. Okay. When we had to go to break, you were talking about the personal price that one of these individuals has to undergo. You suggest or said that they must sacrifice someone in their family that they love. You mean dead sacrifice? Is that correct?
Yes, they will be killed. They will sometimes they'll be ritually sacrificed, other times they'll be killed. And you have to make that choice. And once you're in, that's it, you're in. If you ever decide to leave, you will be killed. So
Blood in, blood out.
yeah, essentially, yes. And once you're in, you are taught by others how to do the ceremonies, the rituals. You will take the skin of an animal, usually it's a coyote, and you will carry that with you. I've talked to a young man that said that he would carry his in a little backpack with him all the time. And so, his friends and him. Now, there's several different types of skinwalker. There are what we call novice skinwalkers that are kids that are bored, that want to learn how to do this. And that's all they do. They change shape. They go run around the neighborhood and scare the heck out of people within their communities. There is another one that uses potions, and they are taught the art of poisoning people. They use something called corpse powder. Corpse powder is taken from the skin and bones of dead people, if possible, infants. And a lot of times a human radius bone from the arm of a baby will be used. And it'll be hollowed out, and this corpse powder will be put in it, and the skinwalker will carry that with them with this potion mixed up with various different types of poisons. and it'll be blown in somebody's face. Once that thing is blown at them, only a medicine man can counteract it. Doctors in hospitals are unable to tell you what they were poisoned by and how to achieve a good outcome.
Well,
So
now let me ask a question. On the one hand, this may sound very dumb. On the other hand, I have been in my life, I've been in a few knockdown, drag out shootouts. Okay. And I have yet to encounter anything that would not succumb to a well placed bullet. Uh, if
I
somebody
know,
knows they are targeted, okay, can they? Is it do any good to take preemptive action?
I know a number of individuals that have a law enforcement background that have attempted to use firearms against these things, and the firearm won't operate. And no matter how much this person, or one guy is a firearms expert, I would say that's what I would call him, and he was not able to get. He was using an AR-15 platform type rifle, and he could not get the thing to fire. And he's a competition shooter, and no matter what he did, he could not get that firearm to fire. After this thing left out of
Was
the
it a
area,
mechanical failure or was it a
mechanical,
round mechanical?
mechanical. The firearm will not operate in its normal, the way a firearm cycles. But as soon as this thing leaves the area, then that firearm is fully capable of firing just like it normally would. And I've known a number of individuals that have reported to me the same phenomenon. No, there are ways around that, but I don't want to get into that.
yeah, I've also had a lot of officers tell me that they've drawn their weapons uh, with the idea that they were preparing to shoot, but that the thing ran away from them so fast it was just a blur, if you can imagine. And from talking with people who had been skinwalkers, they tell me that once you change, everything becomes blurry and everything shifts to a red spectrum.
I thought you
And
said they couldn't leave once they entered that realm.
well, this one was rather a young gentleman in one case, and he was telling me about this. We don't know whatever happened to him after that.
Once you're
He-
inducted into doing that, that's what John is referring to, where you can't leave that order or that kind of like a witch's coven. You can't
yeah,
just say, "Oh, I don't want to do this anymore," and leave. But uh, they can travel great distances instantly. That has been reported. Um, so
yeah,
Okay,
we think
let's get
what they're doing is that they're using from these hides, from these skins, they're using the DNA to affect their change. And here's the truly frightening aspect of all this. They use skins of different animals, so they can appear as any animal that they have the skin of. Now, Navajo children from very early age are taught you don't leave your fingernail clippings laying around, you don't leave your hair in the hairbrush, you don't defecate outside without covering it up. There's a lot of rules, and all of it involves the use of your DNA. A skinwalker can get a hold of somebody's DNA and use it to appear as somebody that looks like that person and get to, so how about this? You somebody that looks like you goes up to another person and causes them harm or poisons them, they point the finger at you. And you don't know. Hey, I was here. I've got an alibi. And but no, they saw you over there. So this is taught at a very early age, and you live by this your whole life.
Well, Jonathan, this sounds almost science fiction-y. Now, obviously, many people, and I don't have a lot of knowledge, okay, about the Navajo Nation. I don't have a lot of knowledge about your history, your legends, the myths. Okay, I have a little, enough to make me dangerous, but I'm in no way am I an expert. Even saying expert probably is wrong, but the idea that a human being can physically change form, their bones, their hands, their arms, their legs, their head, etc. How is that accomplished? It sounds like magic, but especially in the white culture, okay, magic has always been kind of poo-pooed. Now, granted, Western civilization has gotten away from nature. There's no doubt about that. Things that our ancestors 1,000 years ago took for granted. For example, I'm a vampire aficionado. Okay, I've always loved good horror in the vampire genre. I wrote a novel called Past Sins about the vampire genre. But, all the years I was a cop, I investigated 2 cattle mutilations where the animals were exsanguinated, okay, which actually put me on the track initially to write this book. But, I've never encountered anything in my years of law enforcement that would suggest that this was real. But what you're telling me is that in your culture, among your people, this might not be so crazy.
It is by far, it is not crazy. And I'll tell you right up front, this stuff is real.
I'm not doubting you. I don't doubt you.
We actually had a family come in one time, and they wanted to talk to me and Stan, and they said that upon arriving home, they saw a coyote trying to get into the corral to get at the sheep. So the husband takes out a .22 rifle. Everybody carries firearms over there, so he takes out a .22, shoots the coyote, hits it in the flank. The coyote is dragging itself with its front legs into the tumbleweeds, and its rear legs are still sticking out. So he goes over there with the rifle, grabs onto one of the legs and starts pulling it. And as he's pulling it, he says this thing turned into a human leg in his hand. He drops it, looks down, and there's this figure of a skinny native man with long hair, basically wearing nothing but a loincloth. And if you can imagine, if you took a big sponge and dabbed it in white paint and just blotched it all over your body, including your hair. And so this paint is not fully covering everything. It's just blotched on, and it's cracked and breaking off in places. And this is what he sees. He looks at the wife. They're going, what do we do now? Do we just kill it? Because they knew exactly what it was. They called the police department. Police department shows up, and the Navajo officer basically says, we want nothing to do with this.
Really?
Yeah, it's that startling and that frightening for some of the officers. So they turn around and call the ambulance. Ambulance shows up with the Navajo crew, and they gingerly put it on the gurney, strap it down, and haul it to the hospital. When they got to the hospital, the doctors, the Anglo doctors, chased all the Navajo staff out of the ER and proceeded to do emergency surgery on this guy. They saved him. So the family had come to us and they said, "Oh my God, what do? We shot it. It's going to come back after us." They were terrified. And as we talked to them, it came out that, oh, by the way, we recognize who it was. And it's one of our neighbors that lives, over on this direction. And so we immediately, that changed everything. We told them, according to Navajo tradition, if you were to go up to the door and knock on this guy's door and tell him, "I know who and what you are," then within 3 days he'll die. And that's just something that's baked into the tradition. And I've actually seen it happen on a couple of occasions. So after that, these guys were just all kinds of happy, and they left with this ace in their back pocket. But I've also seen situations. I had a relative that shot one, and he shot what he described as a wolf or a coyote trying to get into the corral. And several days later, an old man up on the mountain died, who had long been suspected of being one of these. So he goes off to the local border town and starts bragging to everybody at the bar, "I killed a skinwalker." And it wasn't too long after that, he's chasing his own family around with an axe trying to kill them. And he got put into a home in a border town, and several months later he died. So they said that, obviously he was cursed, or his mind just become unhinged because of the whole thing. So things like this happen more often than not. In my investigations, I've known the identities of at least 6 of them, 2 of them from just last year. And last year, I just put word out in the community that if you continue going about the way you're going, I'm going to out you to the entire community and they're going to know who you are. And activity seemed to stop at that point.
I wouldn't have never believed it up until the point that I actually witnessed it with my own eyes. Growing up between my mother's home in Oklahoma and my father's home on the Navajo reservation, I had always heard stories about the Skinwalker, and growing up and hearing those, I thought they were nothing more than stories, folktale kind of thing. But actually witnessing the thing, seeing it with my own eyes and seeing what it's capable of, it changes your perspective. I did an investigation one time that was based in a haunting and some witchcraft related phenomenon in an office space. One of the phenomenon that was very common and was what is referred to as an apport, where you'll have objects that'll appear out of thin air or manifest. In this case, the situation was coins. We had, in that particular investigation in 2 days, we had a total of 66 coins that materialized out of thin air. And I witnessed this at least 10 times, where you had coins fall out of nothingness, out of thin air, right in front of your face into the floor.
Contemporary,
Yes.
or
U.S.
ancient,
coins,
or
all denominations of U.S. coin, quarters, nickels, dimes, pennies. There was I think, a higher number of pennies that occurred within the totality of it. One unique thing was that these coins would hit the floor and they would behave like any other coin would that you flipped out of your pocket or something. But out of all of the 66 coins, they all landed heads up. And and I know from a statistics and probability standpoint, that can't happen, on its own. It wouldn't happen. But that opened up, the door, that seeing that there is phenomenon that occurs that normally we would say that's impossible. According to physics and laws of science, that's not even possible. But when you witness it with your own eyes, you learn that these kind of things do happen, can and do happen, and repeat themselves. So I think with that, later on, John and I witnessing UFO phenomena and things of that nature, we realized that one commonality is this idea of dimensions, where, like with the coins are coming from somewhere else into our physical world and appearing, and from some other dimension or some other plane of existence. Most peoples have the idea that when we die, our life force, our spirit or soul, leaves our body and it goes somewhere else. And we kind of feel that it goes into some other plane of existence. From time to time, we get hauntings and things of that nature where these spirits and or energies will make themselves known. And but it really, all of these things that John and I experienced over the years, Bigfoot, it opened our eyes that these things, these phenomena are real. And you don't necessarily have to be native or, anybody can experience it. I once met a couple. I once met a couple from McMinnville, Oregon, after John and I presented one time, where the day after our presentation, I had gone down to have breakfast early, and I met this young Anglo couple, and they asked if they could join me for breakfast. I said, sure. So we had breakfast, and they said, oh my God, we were watching your presentation, and there's one slide where you show this image of this skinwalker. And they said, we've seen that exact same thing one time when we were traveling out near Las Vegas. We were on the highway, and our teenage daughter started screaming her head off, and she ended up telling them, that there was something running by the vehicle. And she said, what you guys have in your illustration, that's exactly what we seen. But they had no connection to Native American culture or anything, but they did see that.
Well, now you mentioned two things, and I these are two areas that I wanted to explore with you. Now, you tell me if I'm correct or if I'm all wet, but it's my understanding that the Navajo people believe that we have come from a series of worlds, and currently we're in what they identified as the fourth world. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And they came here as a result of a horrible catastrophic event that happened, and the star people or the ant people brought them out. Is that correct?
Holy beings is what they're referred to. These are gods, so to speak, that allowed the human beings to exist in those worlds. But the humans kept making certain mistakes in those worlds, and they would be basically told to leave those worlds into the next world. And the human beings kept making these mistakes, and eventually it leads into this fourth world, or in some versions there's a fifth world that is the shining world. So there's kind of two different versions of that, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, it follows that. And I'll let John explain the correlation to dimensions and things of that nature.
Yeah, in string theory, it talks about the possibility of 10 or 12, all the way up to an infinite number of other dimensions. And in the Navajo story, it talks about the people in two different worlds. The last world and one of the other worlds prior to that, they went through a hole in the sky and climbed into another world. And then this new world, that's where they existed. So we started looking at a lot of this stuff, what could link all these phenomenon together. There had to be something, you're a criminal investigator, you're thinking in terms of why. And what we came up with was this idea back in 2006 of these parallel dimensions and the possibility that the Navajos could have been traveling to a different dimension. Um, and then we have UFOs that appear to literally pop out of into existence with a loud pop. And the people tell us that it's so strong it feels like a detonation. And they fly around for a while and then they fade out and disappear. We have Bigfoot that we've actually tracked for miles, and the tracks disappear. I don't know if you know much about tracking. If you were in law enforcement, you probably tracked more than one person in your career. When you have trackable ground, that person could not have made another step without leaving an impression. And we have tracks that suddenly just stop.
Now, let me ask you, because in my years of investigation and research with the magazine, not as a police officer, I came across two versions, Jonathan, of Bigfoot. There's the much more natural version where the creature has 5 toes. But then there is a version associated with UFOs that only has 3 toes. Now, with that being said, there was a case that happened maybe 50 years ago, give or take, in Ohio, where a woman, a farm wife, and her husband had a small farm, and the husband also had a day job. So he gets up in the morning, goes to work. She's out in the kitchen washing the dishes after breakfast. And there's forest, okay, or a lot of trees out beyond her backyard. And suddenly she saw something huge. Now there had been in that time frame, there had been a number of UFO sightings and reports. And this creature walked out of the woods toward her house, got up on the porch, was walking to the back door. She had it was a farm thing, right? She had a shotgun next to the back door in the house. She grabbed the shotgun, stepped out on the porch, and fired point blank into this thing. It suddenly exploded in a flash of light, boom, and it was gone. Now, she immediately called the police. They came out. There were 3 toes, footprints, with this thing walking from the woods up. That's why I asked, have you encountered that as a ranger, the 3 and 5 toed variety of big feet?
We mainly see the 5-toed variety out where we're at. And but here's an interesting point. In our investigations, we've done hundreds of cases, and when you have reports of Bigfoot, there are always corresponding reports of more UFO activity. and vice versa. When we have a lot of reports of UFO activity, we suddenly start seeing Bigfoot reports coming in. So we know that they're intertwined somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But we think that a lot of this has to do with Bigfoot coming in from another dimension. We've been out in the forest a lot. We've hiked all these mountains and forests and everything else and desert landscapes. We have never found the bones or the remains of a Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we have been told by natives that they've seen them disappear, just vanish right in front of them. So we know, we don't consider them spiritual beings, but we consider them maybe dimensional, pan-dimensional beings.
But when they're here, they're definitely corporeal.
That's right. And they leave footprints and they can kill livestock. We've had them step over corrals and tuck a sheep under the arm and walk off with it. And in one case, we actually had a bunch of sheep that were literally taken almost like you grabbed it around the throat, grabbed it on the back of the wool, and just ripped the wool off its back. And we had quite a number of sheep killed like that in a corral.
Well, I'm sure the farmers or the ranchers, okay, know or at least suspect that. And they're, as you stated earlier, everybody has a weapon. What reports have you received where they've tried to shoot these things?
We actually had a game and fish officer chasing and shooting at one. My own department, the Navajo Rangers, we actually had an unwritten no-shoot policy because we didn't want one of our officers to get all excited. He saw one at the edge of the forest, takes out his rifle and starts shooting at it, and then finds out that it's a guy in a Hollywood suit with a zipper on the back. So we thought, just leave it alone. In Navajo culture, they tell you don't look at it in the eyes. If you look at it in the eyes, it can take control of your mind. Leave it alone. Let it live. You go on with your business. You understand that they're out there, but live and let live.
Yeah, until they become a threat.
Well, medicine men tell us that Bigfoot has been around since the 1600s with Navajo, that they've encountered him way back there just after they first got horses from the Spanish and actually roped one with a lariat made of horsehair, braided horsehair. So it sat down on the ground between all these riders. And according to the medicine man, it spoke to them in Navajo. And it
Really?
told them, if you will take me up to Mesa Verde and release me, I will not trouble you again. So they rode with it between them all the way up. This is on the New Mexico side, all the way up to Colorado and Mesa Verde, and released it up there. So there are stories like that in our history.
Well, there is a guy that I interviewed 10 or 12 years ago. He was a former police officer, detective, and right now his name escapes me, but he wrote a series of books called 411, The Disappearance of
Dave Pilates.
Paulides.
Yeah.
David Paulides, yeah. And he has documented, especially in federal reserves, okay, hundreds, if not thousands over the years. Now, this is not like last year, but this goes back 70, 80 years at least, documented cases where people have inexplicably gone into the woods, many of them, fully equipped, hiking. They have a rifle with them or a firearm of some kind, and poof, they just flat disappear. Sometimes never to be seen again. Other times their remains may be discovered a year, 2, 3 years later with enough material there to identify who they were. Now, Paulides, although he never specifically, when I knew the guy, came out and identified the Bigfoot creature, that's what he was implying, that this often was connected with the sighting of Big Feet. What's your take on that?
Dave actually has a book that addresses the tribal Bigfoot. So he does have material out there that's related to that particular phenomenon. For us, in a lot of these cases, when you get a report of a Bigfoot, when we get on scene and we begin looking at the interviews and the evidence that's there, it could go one of two directions. Either a traditional Bigfoot sighting, or that something related to what we spoke about earlier, the witchcraft and the skinwalker kind of thing. So it could go either or, until you get into it.
What's your take on it, Stan?
Yeah, I think you mean John. Go ahead, John, jump in.
Oh, well, no. You've been sitting there awfully quiet for a while, so, or either of you. I mean, it doesn't matter. Jonathan, what's your take on it? Do you ascribe to that, or could it be something else like a Wendigo, or God only knows what? But something apparently has been grabbing people for a long time.
Well, we definitely have a lot of missing people, and we've got a landmass that's where you could actually go missing and nobody would ever find you in some of the places we've been. So it wouldn't be unusual for people to just fall off a cliff and nobody finds them for months or even years. But it's possible. We've seen Bigfoot that have been described as alpha males that have killed horses. And it's sad to see when you talk to the family, and they're literally crying because their horses were killed by these things, and here they were actually being friendly with the Bigfoot that they did know that were there. They would leave them food. They would leave corn for them, and they'd come back the next day. All the corn was eaten up and tossed aside. And then all of a sudden, the horses are being disturbed, and one of them gets killed, and then another one, and the third one they ended up having to sell it because they didn't want it to die too. And it's heartbreaking when you see stuff like that. And I think they showed it in the Netflix show where the panels, these steel corrugated panels of metal, were literally ripped in two. And the guy's looking at it and saying, you can't rip this stuff, you can't take it in your hands and tear it in two. And he's basically saying whatever did it is massive. We, on our reservation, we have, we call them emaciated or scrawny Bigfoot. They tend to be a little more on the skinny side, and only about 7 foot, 8 foot, maybe. I went to a conference where they talked about the boreal Bigfoot. And they said, if you can imagine 14, 15 foot tall and just completely, built like Superman. They talked about a well-known guy that had a TV show, a survival type TV show that went up into an area where Bigfoot were really prevalent up in Alaska. and they said that the producers got a call from him saying, "Come and get me. I'm not staying here." And they said it was because of the Bigfoot activity, and he's never been known to duck and run like that. So, you know, something really serious had to have happened for him to react that way. You know, all we're saying is that we think that this dimensional idea, from an investigator standpoint, it's the only thing that fits so far. Now, we're open. If somebody has a better theory, we are open to those other theories. We haven't found anything in all these years that could change that idea yet.
Well, I came across some. Well, some of this I've known for a long time, and some of it gets off into areas of the Hebrew and Christian Bibles, Old
Right.
Testament stuff. And the book of Enoch, okay, which is today
One of the
considered to be an
apocryphals.
apocryphal book.
Yeah.
Yes. And basically, it talks about a very long time ago, the sons of God or angels came down to earth, fancied the local ladies, okay, and basically took them as concubines, wives, whatever. They had children by them. These children became known as the Nephilim. They grew up, became, according to the Bible, great men of renown. Okay, now I don't know what the hell that means, but apparently they were big, very big, physically big, as much as 12, 13, 14 feet tall, which sounds very similar to what you're talking about right now. So, my point of all this, and there's a lot more to it, but my point is, could these be, okay, the ancestors of these original Nephilim? Now that's a weird thought, but it's one that crossed my mind. You obviously know some information about that. Have you ever considered that to be a viable possibility?
Yeah, I would say that we've entertained that possibility. I've got a background in studies of scripture, both in the Latin Vulgate and the Greek, and you know, a lot of the information is there. Um, you take it, you try to find evidence that would prove that. We haven't found anything definitive that could lead that direction, but there's always that possibility.
The one thing that I think John and I agree on is that, you know, we worked the entire Navajo reservation. That's 27,000 square miles. So that's equivalent to the state of West Virginia. It is in some places, very remote areas where you don't have habitation or homes, you know, in some of these areas. And what we do find is that, just like what was mentioned earlier, in regards to the Bigfoot, you know, when we're out there, this thing isn't living full time in the woods. We have been out there in those woods. On occasion, yeah, you'll have incidents involving these things referred to as Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but they don't exist full time within that realm, like said wildlife do. You know, yeah, you can find the remains and evidence of bobcats and bears and coyotes and all of these things that live there in the woods. You can find that. You can find their remains. You can find where they have their patterns where they go hunting and drink water from. You know, you can find all of that. But with the Bigfoot, predominantly, you're not going to be able to see that. And again, our reservation is huge, and we haven't seen the evidence of that there. So we feel that these things are of an interdimensional type of being that is either crossing over on their own, or they're being placed here by some other entity or some other source, be it a UFO or extraterrestrial or whatever that might be, that's putting these things here within our environment to either collect information or to gather, data or whatever, and then they're brought back across to that side or that plane of existence. So
That's kind of a freaky thing, isn't it? I mean,
well, it is, a lot of this stuff, over the years, we officially investigated it for about 11 years. And at times we would have case after case after case, just one after the other. And other times you wouldn't be receiving anything. And whether just like the phenomenon we've seen today, with the eclipse, if our planet's being affected upon by certain forces that affect these kind of things. I mean, being in law enforcement, and John knows that during the full moon, it definitely affects your communities and people. This lunar or lunacy idea, there's something to that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure. I was a paramedic in Seattle. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Without a
Yeah,
doubt, there is.
it's called a hyperserotonin effect. And what it's caused by is positive ions in the atmosphere, which are bad for you.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I a long time ago, as I said, I learned to pretty much keep my mouth shut and my ears open, because there's a lot of things that, on the surface anyway, have no explanation whatsoever. Now, you've talked about cryptids, okay? You've talked about Sasquatch. You've talked about the Skinwalker. I knew and was friends with John Keel, who was a very noted paranormal researcher. He did a lot of stuff in the UFO field, and I'll never forget him telling me, "Well, I don't consider myself a ufologist. If anything, I'm a Fortean." And he was referring to Charles Fort, who back in the 19th and very early 20th century detailed in a series of books some inexplicable things that happened, everything from phenomena in the sky to, I mean, fish falling out of the air from a clear blue sky, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But he was involved in a case where I'm originally from, in Pennsylvania, Central Western, that was only 2 or 3 hours away from my home, down in West Virginia, a place called Point Pleasant. And this cryptid became known as the Mothman. Okay, now, if you've ever read Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, tremendous amount of information in there about this. But besides Sasquatch and Skinwalker, did you ever encounter anything similar to that creature that he talked about, this flying, or had the capability of flying, humanoid creature?
I have. I spoke to a young lady that was out walking her dog early in the morning in a major border town. She said that as she was walking, she saw what looked like a winged human that flew up from where it was standing, and it just hovered in the air momentarily and then glided to one side and was obscured by a water tank and disappeared shortly after that. And she said that she was so astonished and shocked that she just turned around and went back down the trail again. And this girl is native, um, but she's in a major border town area of the reservation, um, and she was just completely shocked. And she'd never told anybody about it because she was afraid people would think she was crazy
Yeah, the stigma that
until
goes with it. Yeah.
yeah, until she met me and she knew what I was doing. Um, to be honest with you, we didn't plan on getting into this field at all, speaking about it or anything else. But we had UFO cases that were coming up, and in order to learn the questions to ask during a UFO investigation, we got a hold of organizations like MUFON, and I told Stan jokingly, I says, put your tinfoil hat on. We're going to go down to Phoenix to this
Yeah.
convention and go see the crazy people. And we went down there, and oh man, we met Dr. Lynn Katai. We met the MUFON people. Uh,
Did it change
what
your
was
opinion about the crazy people?
yeah, it did because these, oh, what was his name? The guy that did the first book on Roswell, Friedman.
No, Bill Moore.
Yeah, there was what was his name? Stan.
And Berlitz.
Stanton.
And
Yeah, I
Friedman.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but I
Stanton
couldn't think of it.
Friedman.
Oh, there you
Uh,
go.
we met with him, and they indicated to us, they says, you guys should be speakers. And we were kind of like, oh, no, not us. We're nowhere near that thing. And as it turned out, MUFON invited us. We spoke there. There was a little guy sitting in the front row with a clipboard. Turned out his name was Alejandro Rojas. And he invited us to speak at the 2013 International UFO Congress. And we spoke there. It must have been about 2,000 people in the audience. And that's really how we got into this thing. We didn't plan on it at all. But I had turned to Stan and said, I'm getting too old to worry about what people think about me anymore. And
Well, let me ask you a question, and this is one that I generally do not usually talk about publicly. I have, but not in any great depth. Back in 1988, 89,
right.
I had been out of the law enforcement 2 years at that time. I medically retired in 86. And I had a friend of mine who at the time was the MUFON state director for the state of Idaho, where I was living. And this guy's name was Don Mason, hell of a nice guy. Unfortunately, he left us years ago. But he called me up and he said, Don, he said, I've got something here. He said, I think you need to take a look at. Well, as it turned out, I went up to his home and a man had been discovered over near Jerome, Idaho. No idea how he got there. His body was discovered in the woods. He just had on a pair of underwear. His possessions were found several miles away. But here was the kicker. The guy had been mutilated like a cow. Okay. I was intrigued, very intrigued, and I started doing some investigation. That put me on a 3 or 4 year attempt to get to the bottom of it. Now, he was not the only guy, as I was to discover, that had been mutilated very similar to animal mutilations.
Right.
And I became known at that time as one of the only researchers investigating this phenomenon. And I'll tell you, what I discovered was quite terrifying. Fortunately, it was not a frequent phenomenon, but it did happen. Now, in all of your time, okay, in law enforcement, especially out in the area of the reservation, as you said, Stan, 27,000 square miles. Did you ever come across anything like that? Now, with things like skinwalkers and sacrifices, maybe something could have been discovered that could have been mistaken for mutilation. But when I'm talking about mutilation, I'm talking about the removal of an eye. I'm talking about the rectum being cored out. I'm talking about the sexual organs removed. Okay, that type of thing, just like a cattle mutilation. Gentlemen?
I personally didn't ever investigate those kind of cases. Not that they didn't exist. John and I worked with the various CI, criminal investigation entities throughout the reservation, and even the FBI at times. But I don't recall any of the cases I did. Now, I did.
Gentlemen, wait, I hate to break you off, Stan. I'm looking at the clock. We just ran out of time. I'm going to ask you. No,
Gotta
really.
have them back again. Maybe next week. We'll
Absolutely.
Can you guys come back next week?
Can you guys hang on for just a couple of minutes after we close the show?
Sure thing.
Sure.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm definitely going to try to have these gentlemen come back. In the meantime, have a great week. Thursday, okay, if the good Lord is willing, the river don't rise, and Commander Cobra gets his internet and electricity back. He got knocked out by that tremendous nor'easter storm up in Maine. UAP Crossfire will be on the air 5 p.m. Pacific time. In the meantime, have a great week. Thank you so much. And we got to run, so be good.